Okay, let's have a quick review on sine, cosine, and tangent and their ratios. I think maybe if we spend some time with those trig functions, hopefully the homework that we've been doing recently will be a little bit easier. So let's remember what our ratios mean. S stands for sine, and it is opposite over hypotenuse. And then we need to remember to pay attention to whatever angle they give us. Remember, we use theta usually instead of x when we're talking about an unknown angle. Hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse. It is directly opposite of the 90-degree angle. Adjacent is one of the rays that the angle shares. Over here, opposite side, it doesn't share either of those pieces. There's the opposite. When I come over here, it says solve for x. Here I have my angle degree of 40. I happen to know the side opposite of it, and I need to know the hypotenuse. Then I say the sine of 40 is opposite, over hypotenuse. I do a little calculator work. One thing I do need you to do, let's see if we can see that without a glare. I need you to go to mode. You need to make sure degree is highlighted. If degree isn't highlighted, you're not going to get these right. So check that out. All right, so now I'm going to take the sine of 40. And we usually round to 4 decimal places. So here I'll put 0.6428 equals 15 over x. Should have written a little smaller. Times both sides by x. And I will get 0.6428x equals 15. Do a little division. 15 divided by, and I get x is 23.3. Round to the nearest tenth for me on these, please. Solving for x, we now know that missing side length is 23.3. I've got to work just a little bit differently when we're solving for an angle. Here's theta, here's the opposite side, and here's the hypotenuse. Sine of theta is opposite over hypotenuse. I can divide and I can get a decimal right there if I want to, or I can type it in as a fraction here in a minute. Now, I need to get rid of sine. So the inverse function that we use, we're going to take, you'll hear some teachers call that inverse sine. You'll hear some teachers call that arc sine. And I tend to go back and forth, and they mean the same thing, so don't freak out if I say one or the other. It will cancel on this side, leaving theta. Inverse sine, we find on our calculator by going second, and then I hit the sine button, and it gives me that little sine raised to the -1 up there. So inverse sine, right here, I can type in my fraction, 3 divided by 16, close my parentheses, and it gives me an angle measure of 10.8 degrees. All right, let's move on to the next column. C stands for cosine. Please don't call it cos, it's cosine. The A stands for adjacent. H is again the hypotenuse. Oh, here we go. Here's the adjacent side, and here's the hypotenuse. All right, cosine of 35 is adjacent over hypotenuse, times both sides by 20. I could just type that in my calculator exactly like I see it. 20 times the cosine of 35, and I get 16.4. Okay, that missing side length is 16.4. going to solve for an angle down here with inverse cosine. Here is the hypotenuse. Here is the adjacent side. All right, so that means I have to use cosine of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, now I would need to get rid of that cosine, so inverse cosine of both sides. Type it in my calculator like I see it again. Here it cancels. Let's see, same thing. I want inverse cosine, second above the cosine button right here. Let's see, second cosine, and I have 10 divided by 26, and I get 67.4 degrees. Theta is 67.4 degrees. Moving on to tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, here's the adjacent side, here's the opposite side. Tangent of 28 is opposite over adjacent, times both sides by 10. I can type that in my calculator. 10 times the tangent of 28, and our missing side is 5.3. Okay, let's move down and solve for a missing angle here. Here's the adjacent side, opposite. Tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent. What are we going to use here? Inverse tangent. Both sides. Cancels here. Type the other side into your calculator. Inverse tangent of 10 divided by 12 gives me the angle measure of 39.8 degrees. All right, we'll spend some time here. Hopefully you'll start to feel a little bit better about those trig functions. Thanks.